Oh shoot, was I muted? Whenever we mean business, this hat comes on, so might as well put it on for now. Also, wow, that changes the. I feel like my whole camera setting just went crazy when I put this hat on versus off. I feel like the adjustment, maybe not. I feel like the white balance got a little better. What's happening, everyone? I'm going to give it 1 or 2 minutes to let people come in. I don't know if it'll be super big of a live stream or not because I didn't really advertise it, but whoever joins. We're going to have a blast. This live stream will be accessible post being live as well. If you hear me all good, just let me know in the chat and then we'll get started. Glad you like the hat. Yeah, it's I should like make this merch, official merch. I only have one right now. I think it's, one of one in the world. But one day. I feel like sometimes it doesn't look aggressively big, but it is. Trust me, it is very big. I'll definitely I'll have to get some more and drop it as like a prize to some sort of competition or something. The nice thing is the Python logo is like, I think not open source isn't the right word, but it's like public domain or something. I don't know. You're allowed to use it as long as you're not like making money off of it. So I was able to make this nice little custom Python hat. Cool. There's some people in here, so might as well start getting started. So today, I mean, the main goal is I've never personally, maybe like besides running 1 or 2 lines, I've never used the Polars library. For people that are unfamiliar with the Polars library, it's a rapidly growing DataFrame library. Has a lot of the similar type of functionality to a library like Pandas, but for reasons of performance, of working with larger data files, etc., it's gained a ton of popularity. I think it's gained enough popularity that I kind of waited and waited to use it at all. But I think at this point I really need to dive in. I see. Do you wear that hat at work? I'm at work right now. This is work, so yeah, I would say I do. I don't wear it on the street much. I have before, and it gets a lot of comments, even though people don't really know what the Python logo is. But it doesn't get outside enough. Yeah, it's a funny hat. Cool. So let me share my screen. We're gonna get into this. Okay, hopefully everyone can see. Yeah, I think it's good to make some content. I would like to make some content that's specific to like, advantages of polars versus pandas. So that might come. This is going to be a very unpolished lesson on polars. I mean, because I'm learning as we go, but definitely this is kind of the starting point to more substantial, more polished polars work. So I'm kind of, in the beginning stages of prepping some stuff like that. I might take the hat off. I look crazy. That's fair. That's fair. But I love Python, so I think the hat's gotta stay on for maybe a little bit longer. All right. So I think before we get into polars and start using it, I just want to kind of say a few words on just learning new libraries, learning new technical skills in general, how to approach it, some strategies that have worked for me. There's no one right answer, but hopefully some of these tips might resonate with some of you. So as a starting point, Polars is another data frame manipulation library, very similar to Pandas, but it's very much performance optimized. It very much takes advantage of parallel execution, etc. So that's kind of why it's gained such rapid popularity. Some more details. This is from the Polars website, but on the benchmarking test that they did, you can see that some queries that took 207 seconds in Pandas took only 8 seconds in Polars, and that also beat out PySpark and Dask quite substantially. So quite impressive things that they're saying, and it's something that maybe I would love to dive into more. Yeah, this is going to be a meta learning live stream, if I understand the meaning of meta learning. But yeah, very much I'm learning, and everyone hopefully is going to learn alongside. But yeah, very much not a polished presentation by any means, but I still think there's a lot of nice things to that. So some advantages of polars. I like the terminology embarrassingly parallel. I feel like that's pretty funny. And I also like the concept of close to the metal, really taking advantage of the hardware and machines, and I think that's one of the big. Oftentimes, you hear about advantages of Python versus other languages, and I think at this point in time, like our machines are so powerful that you don't deal with a lot of the negative downsides of using Python anymore. But like traditionally, libraries like C++ are much closer to the metal, so they're much more efficient. But now Python and I'm sure Polar's leveraging Rust is just taking advantage of all the hardware capabilities. So some reasons I haven't quite used it yet. I feel like it's gaining all this popularity, but in the grand scheme of things, if you're working on pretty standard data analysis tasks, you're not working with gigabytes and gigabytes of data. So it's pretty okay to just use pandas. Also, if these routines that you're using don't need to be done on a repeated basis, it's okay if a job is a bit slower, if it's just a one-time thing. But where you really got to start worrying about performance is if that job happens every day. If you got to keep repeating that job, then the additional computation time really starts to add up, and you really want to start thinking more about how much time it's taking and how much resources you need to do that. So that's kind of on the same front. So standard strategy, I would say, that I use to learn any sort of new topic, and I think uh, you know I, I like to take pride, I guess, a bit of pride in like ability to learn things quickly. Back in my, way back now, but back in high school, I didn't have a math class. I ran out of math classes to take. So when I was learning calculus two, I had to completely self learn it. And so learned, I feel like, some strategies back then. And honestly, I learned a lot from YouTube when I was learning calculus two way back in the day. And part of that, I feel like, inspired me to ultimately teach um, on YouTube as well. But I kind of like to start with documentation of any new library. Usually is written in a very clear way, and it highlights the things that the library developers want you to know about it. So it's going to have a great starting place. I like to supplement that with YouTube videos as needed. I think just it's kind of similar to working with people. You can try to be in a box and learn everything on your own, but realistically, that's only going to take you so far. You will speed up your workflow so much more if you chat with people about the tools that you're learning, if they know something and can give you some tips. So kind of as a placeholder for actual human collaboration, I feel like YouTube videos are great because everyone kind of has their own little tips they can share and learn from there. And I don't think that this is news to anyone on the live stream, but it's just a good thing to kind of reiterate. But I think you don't want to just look at documentation. You don't want to just watch YouTube videos. You very much need to actually start writing code. You can't learn complex math theory or something like that without actually doing some problems that test that knowledge. Same thing goes for programming. So I kind of start with the basics and then get to more advanced. So that's kind of how we'll operate on this live stream. And then I think this is a bit different because this is a live stream, but I think largely when I sit down to learn something new, I think there's some things that you want to be cognizant of. So some kind of general learning recommendations, anything you're learning new. It's all about being focused. Focus is quite important. And I think we have so many distractions in this day and age. So it's like, how can we get apart from that? One book that I've liked reading and feel like try to adopt some of the philosophies from is this book called Deep Work from Cal Newport. And specifically, I feel like one thing that I like to do when I'm learning something new is like give myself 45 to 90-minute blocks of dedicated time that I can just focus on that. I like use this Garmin watch. I'll often just set like an hour timer. And for that, I know like, don't look at my phone, don't do anything. Like I'm very much locked in. When that time runs out, I can take a break, go for a walk. But I very much try to be intentional with how I approach work. On that front, I feel like the biggest killer of any sort of productivity, any sort of learning something new, are our phones. Um, like I just don't like having this on me. I feel like my main recommendation is like turn off the phone. I'm gonna do that now. Uh, and then my other recommendation with this super good art AI image is like trebuchet it. I don't even know what that is. I think I typed in trebuchet image off a building, but I guess ChatGPT very much couldn't create that. But I mean, just like get rid of your phone. I put it in a drawer or something. Uh, I sometimes leave it in the car. I feel like the one thing that it bothers me is there's so much two-factor authentication that sometimes I need my phone. But I, for dedicated learning blocks, turn off the phone. Like just don't look at it. Really keep that 45 to 90-minute block focused. And then I also feel like I'm more productive when I kind of switch up my locations. I can't do a bunch of these deep work blocks all from one location. So I like to kind of use it as an opportunity to check out new coffee shops, check out new places to work from. I feel like it makes it more fun. And I feel like if you're enjoying yourself, having fun, then you're going to pick up more. You're going to learn more. You're going to be more focused. So maybe you want to work from the ocean. Maybe you want to work from the desert, or maybe you want to just go to a coffee shop, a Dunkin', a library, etc. Find something that works well for you. But I think without that, with that, let's actually start diving into the library. Um, and let's see how I can do that. So I'm gonna still sharing my screen. So let me just try to open up a internet tab. So yeah, as I said, documentation, great starting point. I feel like this is a clean looking website, so I do appreciate that. And I think you can look through the website, but my starting point will be to actually go probably to this user guide and check out some of the things that they say there and start actually playing around with some code. Also, just a heads up, I did link in the description a repo that I just have right now. I just have some Pokemon data, same data that we used in the original Pandas tutorial that I made. Um, I got that from Kaggle. I do want to credit whoever put it up on Kaggle, so I'll add a link after this live stream to the original source. But I think that will kind of be our starting point for some of this applied practice with pullers. Yeah, I mean, my first step here, again, it's a little bit different because we're live streaming, so I want to talk through what I'm doing. But yeah, it's just to kind of get a feel of some of the advantages of pullers. I mean, fast, intuitive. I like, the vectorized query engine, parallel, all nice things. Very much makes sense. But here's some initial code. I feel like this is interesting, though, because I don't think that you immediately have this data. But let's click on the getting started, pip install pullers, open up Visual Studio Code. I'm going to work off that repo that I shared in the description. I'm going to create a Jupyter notebook. I feel like that's going to be the easiest. Also, fun little fact, the little slideshow I walked through was all done with code via a platform called Corto. That's worth checking out. I'm going to make some videos on it soon. New file. Testing. I don't know. I'll just call this exploring, and probably no one can see my writing. Exploring not pandas, polars.ipython notebook. All right. Make this a bit bigger. Close this. I'm going to close this sidebar for now. Hopefully people can see. One cool thing that we can do with polars, or I guess with the Jupyter notebook, you could create your own virtual environment, but one nice thing we can do is right through a Jupyter notebook, you can do pip install polars and actually run the installation command right there. Let's see if this works. Cool. So it looks like I already had it. And then let's see if we can import polars as PL. Oh, wow. I realized, sorry guys, I'm opening up my Visual Studio Code and I'm realizing that I was only sharing my tab, not my full screen. So I'll make sure that I share the full screen. That's on me. Apologize for that. Okay, so what I was saying though is that you can run this pip install command. If you just add an exclamation point, you can install polars like that. You might want to create a virtual environment, but it's kind of up to you. I've kind of mentioned that in a few of my recent videos. That's kind of best practice, but it's not necessary, I guess, depending on what you're doing. If you're just exploring a library, probably not super, super necessary. And I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize. I didn't immediately address the screen issue. I know there's some YouTube settings I can configure to like get so there's not much of a lag time. I think there's probably like a 15 to 20 second lag time between me talking and you actually hearing me. I feel like I like that because ultimately the video quality is the best and the mic quality, all of that is the best. So if people watch this retroactively, it's good. I might experiment with the shorter lag time so I can get the feedback much more quickly and address it much more quickly. So something I'll play around with. I don't know how my internet speeds are. This is all still fairly new to me, but import polars as PL. I see someone asking what is polars. Polar is just basically a similar DataFrame library to Pandas, but much more efficient. So I'm going to kind of side by side have polars up and have the documentation up and have my code up. Okay, so I mean, documentation is great for this reason. I'm going to just copy in all of their initial code. Okay, so we see we have a basic data frame. Looks like it has just 3 dates, some integer values, some float values, etc. Very, very basic data frame. I'm curious if Jupyter Notebooks out of the box will display this in a nicer format. So yeah, there is still like kind of a nicer format versus printing. I don't usually love, I feel like, printing my data frames. Maybe that's a better look. I guess it depends on preference, but you can also within Jupyter Notebooks type in display. Cool. I mean, this looks very, very similar to Pandas in the reading writing regards. So it's not happy with me because there's no directory called docs or data. One thing you could do, honestly, I have a folder called data, so I'm going to just use data and data. This should work. Dataset link. So right now there's no data set necessarily, but I did put some data in a repo just called Polars Livestream. So the GitHub for that should be in the description of the YouTube video. So check that quickly, and you'll be able to follow along. But right now, I'm not using any data. The only data we wrote some data to this output CSV, and we read it back from the output CSV. And if I opened up my sidebar here, in the data, we see we now have this output here. Just learned the shortcut for hiding my primary sidebar. It's Command B on Mac. Cool. So writing CSVs, reading CSVs. Reading CSVs are quite nice. A CSV is not the most performant, efficient type of file, but you will see it a lot in the wild because it's human readable. So it is very convenient to use. All right, continuing down with the documentation. Expressions. I think one thing too, kind of on the topic of what data we have access to, there's Pokemon data that we have access to. So I might create a data frame called Pokemon and read from that. So I can kind of just copy the read CSV format that we see. And it is kind of nice to see with my autocompletes, what are the other types of files I could easily read, like Parquet file, JSON file, a database, etc. Just read a CSV file. And I have in our data folder, I think it's just called Pokemon data.csv. Cool. And if we look at that, is there like a nice head method? Is that still the same, I wonder? This is kind of learning on the go. Yeah, it looks like it copies some of the same syntax from, the Pandas library with being able to see the first 5 rows. So here is the Pokemon data linked in the description. Same data that we used in the original Pandas tutorial, but starting to see some stuff. I'm curious also if there's like a .info, and I'll probably see this in the documentation soon enough. But like in Pandas, we can do like .info or .describe. So that's kind of nice. I'm wondering is a .info or .details or something? That'll be an interesting thing to see. All right, so we see this select function. So I feel like as I start seeing stuff, like start seeing this .select, I'm going to start kind of giving myself little problems to try out on my own, and probably use this Pokemon data to do it. So I see that I can grab all columns with df.select, but I could do also, convert it to my Pokemon file by doing Pokemon.select, pl.column, and then asterisk in most different things. So like an asterisk often means all. You'll often see that in many different libraries and different coding resources. So it's grabbing all columns very easily, though. Looks like I could grab 2 columns. So maybe I just wanted to grab the name column. Cool. If I wanted to grab the name column and type 1. Cool. I wonder, this would be more of a displaying thing, but I would like to be able to see the full name. So it does actually look a bit better probably if I print it versus just the automatic display. Happy that the Pandas video was helpful. I very much made the first Pandas tutorial I very much made after completing some freelance work where I just had to use tons of Pandas stuff. And basically I took all of that actual, real world freelance stuff and just baked it into a video. So I think that that's part of the reason it was able to resonate with a lot of people, which was pretty cool to see because it's very much taken from real world tasks I had to do in a freelance position and, kind of running with that. All right, filter. So, I mean, it's okay, cool. I feel like you're a little bit more. I feel like a lot of Panda stuff is kind of baked in without explicitly stating like select or filter. Whereas it seems like right now in Polar is just immediately looking, you kind of specify what type of um, expression you're going to run, and then you actually do it. So let's grab some different types of data here with the filters. Um, we have this Pokemon data, so I'm going to print the head of that real quick. And figure out some expressions we can use to run with these filters. So how about we look at maybe just find like legendary Pokemon, run a filter to do that. So we see some initial filters that they're showing, but we're going to create our own. pl.column. We'll do legendary. Dot. I wonder if there's like an is true, or if I can just write pf.column legendary and that will only give me the true ones. Yeah, it looks like it. Those are all true. I'm guessing there's probably a not. So maybe either the tilde. Yep, the tilde is not. So that's pretty similar to what we would expect from pandas. Sometimes you see exclamation point as not, but it doesn't look like that's the case. So, I mean, this is not explicitly stated anywhere in the Polars documentation. I mean, it probably is, but we're not looking at it now. But I mean, I like to just play around with things and start to get a feel. We do see that very similar to pandas, you can combine expressions. So maybe I wanted to see if we could find any legendary grass Pokemon. Is there any legendary grass Pokemon? I don't know. This would be type 1 equals grass. And we'll print that. So anyone that's joining new, we're really just kind of just beginning to explore polars kind of actively with some code. Cool. So I'm a noob, I guess, when it comes to Pokemon. These are past my time. Generation 4 and 5. I'm not familiar with these legendary grass Pokemon. And I guess the select and filter is like Spark. I also am not like, I've done some PySpark stuff, but again, I feel like I'm not dealing with a lot of data engineering type jobs that really, really depend on large workflows, large data sets, et cetera. So all PySpark polars is newer to me. Cool. So I'm going to, I guess, kind of continue down the documentation a little bit. Might be worth doing some group buys. But I mean, this is a great starting point, the Polars user guide, to kind of get a feel for things. So I'm going to kind of just dive through this a bit more. I think, what I would be balancing with learning Polars is like, you need to learn kind of how to do the same type of things as you would do with pandas. But you also don't want to just do exactly the same things you do with pandas, because why learn another new data frame manipulation library? You really want to learn some of the key concepts of polars that differentiates it. So I would spend some of my time just kind of duplicating things. So one cool idea would be take a video like the pandas tutorials that I've posted and follow it, line by line, or follow it kind of throughout the video. But instead of writing the pandas code to do different filters and stuff, see if you can do the exact same filters with polars. and what's the same, what's different. That's a good way to like pick up something new. I think the cool thing about anything programming is that you just need to understand the logic components. So if you understand what you're trying to do, uh, oftentimes implementation is just a matter of figuring out syntax. It's not like you're reinventing the wheel. It's very, very similar. So that's why people can, pick up Python code and then transition over to Java pretty easily, because a lot of the logic stays the same. There's subtle differences, but really you want to know the logic. But there are differences between languages, so you kind of do want to also pick up the concepts. So I'd spend some of my time just learning the syntax, getting a feel of how things are the same, how are they different. But then I would kind of dive into different concepts. So I might just take a look at this concepts section of the Polars documentation too. Okay, data types overview. Okay, this doesn't look too crazy. I do think it's worth mentioning like arrow data types and arrow memory arrays. It's a much more efficient way of storing data, and it's very common across different data pipelines and data like processing workflows to use arrow data types. I think one of the big changes with the Pandas library in recent days, I think the ultimate change from Pandas 1.x to 2.0 is that it was able to incorporate the arrow data types. So it didn't just depend on NumPy anymore. And NumPy also just released a version 2.0, but one of the kind of traditional downfalls of NumPy was it wasn't performance optimized for like string manipulations. There was just a lot of different little challenges with NumPy that arrow became kind of a bit better of a kind of standard data types and memory arrays, kind of more efficient way to manipulate data, and just very widespread across all sorts of platforms. Series and DataFrame, it's very similar to our Pandas expectations. And again, series is what we expect, a one-dimensional data structure. DataFrame is multi-dimensional or two-dimensional with many different columns. Very similar to SQL too. So nothing like crazy new yet. It's nice that we can do head and tail just like in Pandas. Sample is also something that we can do in Pandas. Real quick, go back to our code. I guess I could pop this up full screen so I can play around with things. But one cool thing, we could do with our Pokemon data is sample it, get 5 different rows. It does seem like when we print it out, it's a little bit nicer. So I'll print out 5 random rows, run that. Rattata, I can't even pronounce that. I know that Pokemon, but it's struggling to say it. But if I keep running this by running Control Enter to just run it in place, we see we get a bunch of different random Pokemon. So this is a good way to like quickly get a feel of your data instead of just looking at the top or bottom, because sometimes you might have an order that it doesn't let you see everything when you're just doing head or tail and seeing the top or bottom. It might be sorted in such a way where you don't get the full variance you want. How's it going? I would say, this is like nothing crazy. I'm very much learning this library as we go. I would say to follow along, you should be familiar with working in Python and some set of, some semblance of installing libraries, working with data frames, working with spreadsheet and tabular data in Python, but nothing crazy right now. This is very much a exploration. And also, feel free, anyone, to ask questions as we go along. It's I guess, interesting concept of learning and live streaming the learning process, where it's not quite the same. When I said focus at the start of this live stream, it is a little tricky to both focus and, chat through my thoughts. Okay, data structures and data types, very similar to Pandas. I'm going to keep going down the line here with context. Okay, this seems more interesting and kind of a bit different, so worth kind of looking into this a bit. Context and expressions. Okay, context is selection, filtering, and group by / aggregation. Okay, so we got a basic data frame. This is all still what we've seen. What is the first here? Oh, okay, it's grabbing the first item. I should probably actually read things before I start saying what it does. Supplies, expression. So I feel like this is doing a lot of different things at once. Okay, so like when some expressions produce length 1 series and some do not, it does some broadcasting. So like we see this sum here of the, I don't know, maybe this stands for numbers. Because that's only going to produce one single value of 11. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, plus 5 is 11. It gets broadcast to everything else. Meanwhile, when we sort the names, we see that we get alphabetical order, or yeah, E, F, H, S, I guess null values, special value, and it gets just lumped at the top. That fills the full aggregate though. When we do names and we just get first name, it's interesting. It just takes the first item from the names. So foo was the first item, and it aliases it as first name. So we get this first name up here. And then the mean of numbers times 10, we could simply do 11 divided by 5, which would be like, or maybe it's 11 divided by 4. I'm not quite sure what it would be, but yeah, another similar thing where it gets broadcast. It is correct that Polars is made with Rust. And I'm not super familiar. Rust is not something that there's so many languages and different things to learn that you can only spend so much time with everything. But I think one thing that you do see in this documentation is that you also see the Rust version of how to deal with these different things and the Python. So it's very easily compatible with Rust, and it is built in Rust. So wow, this is a cool little fun fact here. Importing in Excel SB. I'm not actually sure. I would expect that's some sort of Excel workbook type file, but 9 minutes with pandas, 36 seconds with Polar. So I think that one thing that we will do in a little bit, I do have some data that's like a 2 gigabyte file that it's worth trying to load with pandas first and then loading with Polars and seeing the difference. I think one thing I need to be careful of is not making sure that when I run it in pandas and then rerun it in Polars that I'm not accidentally like leaving the data in memory where it would very much slow down the Polars load if it was still in memory in pandas. And also it might kill the, hopefully it doesn't kill the live stream either. So things to play around with. Okay, so this might be worth just trying real quick with this select doing some things. So maybe I want to sort the Pokemon names and then get like some averages and put that in a new data frame. So I'm going to do that real quick in my code. Again, Pokemon data is linked in the GitHub repo below. I've linked it in the description of the live stream, and you can just go into the data folder there and find the Pokemon data there. Yeah, so we're seeing some very nice perks of and anecdotal evidence of big files in pandas and then it actually working in polars. And there's ways to get around this a bit in pandas, but at some point it's like you got to ask yourself, if you're just doing all sorts of workarounds in pandas, you might as well try to switch to something. So this really starts, I think, taking effect as you start getting into the gigabyte plus range of data. Whereas if you're in, if your data file is a couple megabytes, you're probably not going to see huge differences in either. And it's probably not going to be such a big difference that it really matters too much. But I know that when I've worked in pandas with 6 gigabyte files, what you ultimately have to do is like, you load in your pandas file. This is just kind of some, wow, I'm drawing a blank on the word. Mock code. Why do I not know the simple code? But like, load in some data file, and then you can, I think, pass in like a chunks keyword or something like that. I forget exactly how it works, but you can pass in some chunks so it streams in the data in pandas. And then basically you can do for chunk in df and then load it in as you go, do some processing, on that chunk, and then create maybe a smaller like output data frame. But ideally, you could just work with that data frame at one go, and that's often where pullers might take an advantage. So we'll play around with some bigger data in a little bit. I've added to the README of the GitHub folder just a Kaggle data set that I thought was kind of cool. It's trending YouTube data. It's like a 2 gigabyte CSV file. So that should give us probably a big enough data size to start seeing some of the performance benefits here. All right, so let's create do a pullers select where we have an output that is sorted names. How about the average? What are all of our columns? Can I do a Pokemon.columns to see all my columns? Yeah. Maybe we do a average HP and an average attack column. So we're going to do just still getting used to the puller syntax. We'll do a pl.select. We'll get names sorted alphabetically. We'll get average HP. How about we get the max attack? And we just leave maybe speed as is or something like that. So this is not actually meaningful in any sense of the word, but I'm just doing it as an example of like just playing around with this pl.select. Pl.select, hit enter, and then so I first want the names in alphabetical order, so I probably do Pokemon.name. I wonder if I could do .name like this, like you can do in pandas. Not sure if you can. .column, name. I want it in alphabetical order, so I can do .sort. I believe that's what we saw. Do comma. Then we're going to get average HP, so Pokemon.column HP, because we see that's one of the columns here. And then I think we can probably just do a mean. Guessing that will probably work. And then we probably would want to do an alias that this is average HP of all. Average HP is probably good. Kind of the comment you might put is of all. Pokemon. Attack. We'll do .max. I don't know if this will work or not, but that's why we're kind of learning as we go. And we'll call this max attack. Again, I might clarify that it's of all Pokemon here in the comments. And then I'll just pass in the column speed and keep that as is. So let's see what happens if we run this. DataFrame object has no attribute column. How did we do it before? Oh, we do pl.column. and it's already working off of, I switched the order of these. So it's Pokemon.select, and we do PL.column. Okay, so need to get used to this a bit. All right, let's try running that. Cool. So does kind of what we expect. We see we get different values for this last column, but we get the single broadcasted value for these other ones, and we do get it in alphabetical order. If we wanted that to be a little bit neater, I could print this and see it like this. We could get a sample of that by doing sample. So we can start passing. Oh, maybe I need to pass the sample in here. We can get a random sample of 5 rows from this. I guess sample by default is 1 row, but you can get random Pokemon sampled from this. And we see that the max attack and average HP always stay the same, but we do see the speeds are what we expect. So cool to know about this select. What else do we have here? Okay, with columns statement also enters into selection context. Okay, so this would add some new columns, it looks like. Probably have to have a alias when we run this. That would be my thought. But this is, I guess, how we can add some new columns, and we see we reset it to the data frame. Again, filter stays pretty similar to what we'd expect from Pandas, but I feel like we're being very clear with how we label what we're doing here. We're very explicit that we're about to do a filter versus just grab some columns. I'm gonna run another filter real quick. We didn't actually change our Pokemon data frame, so it's still the same thing. We just printed out this as a separate thing, but let's now filter, do some more filters. What if I just wanted to find HP that's greater than like 150? I don't know if that even is true for any of these Pokemon. Few for a few. Snorlax, what a legend. Chauncey, oh wow. Cool. Anyone have any questions about polars yet? I mean, obviously I'm learning as we go, but polars or pandas or anything, feel free to ask and I will answer them as I kind of go through this. I feel like this is now where we're getting into the meat with group by is very important. I would love to count the number of type 1s of all the different types, so that might be a good thing to do. And it's cool we can aggregate different things, it looks like, here. So I'm going to start by trying to just count the number of different type 1s there are. And I'll share this Python notebook at the end. Escape M to make it markdown. So what I'm finding right now is that it is, a lot of similar concepts working with data frames and polars to pandas. So that makes it easier definitely to transition and start using this. Polars. So I want to grab type 1 Pokemon counts. That would be a polars.group, or we need to work off the data frame. So Pokemon.group by, I'm going to group by the column type 1. And then I think if we just, then what did it do after that? .ag. I think if we just did pl.column type 1 dot count. I think that would give us what we're hoping for. Maybe I'm wrong. Or that might not work because we're grouping by type 1. So let's see how they're doing it here in the example. So they're then counting something different. So this is kind of a workaround, it looks like, to count the group members. Just kind of counting a random value here. And I might just do it off of this index value. Okay, cool. This looks pretty good. And then we probably can start combining things. So we've grouped by this. We could, make this an output df. So out equals this. And then we could go ahead and take our output data frame and then, do a select, or maybe even we can just directly do a sort out.column. We want to get this column and then sort it. Out.select. So I feel like this syntax makes sense, but I feel like I don't love. I wonder if there's some shorthand. I don't know if anyone here knows shorthand of grabbing specific columns. I don't know. I guess it's like nice that you're being very explicit with what you're selecting. I feel like it just seems like a lot of code. I do also want my original type 1 here too. Okay, so that sorts it in decreasing order. Is there a way I can pass in increasing or something here? Let's see. I might just do a Google search here. Sort decreasing order polars. And I mean, you don't have to just go flat top to bottom in the documentation, obviously. If you have a project or something you're working on, leverage the documentation and the specific functions you need as needed. So descending, we can make that true. I think that's the same exact key that we have for pandas. I might be wrong. Cool. So is there really the most number of psychic Pokemons in this? I might also add, let's do a filter before we do our group by. Let's do we have this generation, and I'm kind of a noob when it comes to Pokemon. I feel like I know the OG Pokemons. I know the Generation 1 guys. So I might first get Gen 1 equals Pokemon.select. And then it would just be basically, or it would be a filter. So I am kind of liking this syntax. I'm very explicit with what I need to do, and I want to filter only on the generation, which is equal to 1. And then we can run this group by on Gen 1. And then we can get the counts for just Generation 1 Pokemon. Cool. So I guess Generation 1, there's the most amount of ice Pokemon, which I also kind of find surprising. Any Pokemon experts here can validate this. This is the type of things too. I would kind of maybe cross-reference with like a Pokemon database or something. Validate that what I'm getting is correct. Oh, out. Oh, cool. Thank you for this shortcut. So we can also do the shorthand of, if you just need like one single column, I'm guessing you need to use the quotations. Cool, that's good to know. So a lot of the, I mean, it seems like some of the same shortcuts in Pandas work. Oh, this doesn't, oh, now it will work. Also work. Can we do filters right here like this, I wonder? So if I take my original data frame, learning as we go, and I just grabbed, let's say, so in Pandas syntax, we do something like legendary equals, or I guess we're just trying to get the legendary Pokemon. I wonder if this will work. That did not work. I wonder if I did. So I need to look at some of the shortcuts, but in Pandas, we could do something like this and just, this really wouldn't want to do equals true. That's very redundant, but I don't know if maybe that would fix things. In Panda syntax, this would work, but it looks like we would need to do a dot select. I wonder if then we could just do, I don't know. I need to play around with some of the shorthand a bit more. Cool to know, though, some of the same stuff exists. So you also see this question on how long did it take me to learn Python for data science. I feel like that's a ongoing effort. You never like truly learn everything. So I feel like my learning process is very much still continuing. I feel like there's milestones in the process. I feel like the first, I don't know, 3 to 6 months of learning programming in general were kind of a struggle. Like you understood some things, like could get the basics of logic and loops and all of that, but very much had trouble understanding object-oriented programming, classes, all this kind of design nuance. Maybe took, I'd say 3 to 6 months to get over some of those hurdles. And then it was like, okay, I could program things for classes and whatnot for coursework and all of that. But when it came to actual real world projects and jobs, it was very intimidating to learn and to do things on the fly. So I feel like another maybe, year, year or two to start getting more comfortable in a job work setting. But I mean, it's always ongoing. I feel like there's so much, obviously, as I'm showing with polars. I don't know anything about polars right now, but I'm learning as you go. So a lot of it is getting to the point where you're comfortable taking a blank slate, having a task that you're working towards, and being able to implement it. You might have to learn on the fly, but it's really a matter of getting to a point where you're comfortable learning on the fly and accomplishing goals, whether you can do them from scratch or not, or whether you know how to do them when you get started with the project. Doesn't matter. It's just a matter of, can you figure out the pieces as you go? That's really where you want to get to. I also see a question here on what laptop I'm using. I've recently switched to or I guess not super recently now, but probably the past year, I've now been using a MacBook with an M2 processor. I think it's 16 gigs of RAM. I ultimately switched to the MacBook because I was doing some iOS development. I was just getting so frustrated working on a Windows machine and dealing with some of the iOS development hurdles that it just made it way easier to use the MacBook. And I didn't end up switching back. So, I mean, there's perks of each. I feel like operating system. I've used Linux, I've used Windows, and now I'm using Mac or whatever the OS of Mac is. But perks of all, I'm pretty happy though right now with using the MacBook. Yeah, we would be able to do this, right? We could do Pokemon. This is the same shortcut that we saw from Arjun earlier. So this would work. It's just that I don't think we can do easy filters within this. Like maybe we could, in Pandas, we could do Pokemon name dot string dot. Oh, maybe we'll see. Maybe it starts with B. This would be really cool if this works. But I think we would need to pass this into a select. This is a cool example though. Pokemon dot select. And then we can do, I wonder if this will work. That just gives us the bool. Oh, we should do a filter. Sorry. Cool. So this is all of the B names. So this is pretty similar to Pandas syntax, but it doesn't have quite the same shorthand. See another question. Have you ever got stuck during work? If so, what would you do at that time? Yeah, I mean, 100% have gotten stuck many, many times with various work projects. I think it really depends on the context of where you're working. I do a lot of freelance at this point. So I feel like one recommendation I have, I mean, whether you're working on a freelance project or with a team, I feel like one recommendation that I have for avoiding getting stuck in the first place is at least budgeting time for yourself. So with freelance projects or with work projects, I think it's always a good recommendation to kind of budget out how much time you think a task is going to take you. So let's say you have to build some sort of data pipeline. Maybe you think it'll take you just a week. But whenever you budget it with a freelance project or a work project, you want to give yourself probably an extra week, kind of double your expectation because unexpected hurdles pop up. So the first recommendation is, get on top of it a little ahead of time by giving yourself more time to work with. So that kind of first helps avoid emergencies where if you say it's going to be a week, you have a hard deadline of a week, then you run into an issue. You want to budget more time for yourself. So that's kind of an easy first solution. But I think it's a lot of it's just being honest as well. So if I am getting stuck, it's looking at who else am I working with? Can anyone else on my team help me out with what I'm struggling with? And not being afraid to ask them for help. The earlier, the better, because as I said, like you don't want to be asking for help, hours before a deadline. You want to be asking help ahead of time, but just being honest. Hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Do you have any recommendations? I also recommend with anything asking for help, it's good to try it first. So, maybe I don't know exactly how to implement something or do something, but I want to take a stab at it. I want to, maybe do my best bet of what might work. And even if I can only get 60% of the way there, then at least when I talk with my colleague or something on what I'm struggling with, I can kind of show them how I'm approaching things. And it's easier to build off of that versus if you come in with a blank slate, it kind of shows maybe that you're just trying to leverage someone else's help fully and you're not willing to put in the effort yourself. So I like to put in a bit of effort there too. And yeah, I mean, regarding technical things, it's a matter of just trying to Google, trying to find resources. Looking at a lot of Stack Overflow threads, etc., using ChatGPT, looking at Reddit threads, trying to figure out how other people have solved similar problems. So finding similar problems also helps if you don't have a colleague or another person to work off of. So good question. And I am taking some tangents. So hopefully people are okay with the tangents because I think it's beneficial. I'm going to take one more and then I'll do a little bit more Polar stuff. I see. Any advice on leetcoding? I feel like my recommendations for LeetCode and solving problems like that, I think one nice advantage you have is you can always view solutions. So if you really ever get stuck, you can always look at how people have solved things. But I feel like my recommendation with getting better at LeetCode and problems like that is just a matter of discipline and repetition. I've recommended to students I've worked with in the past of hey, every day, I don't care, what you're doing, how busy you are, every day, dedicate 30 minutes to LeetCode. Maybe it's the first thing you do when you wake up. Maybe it's the last thing you do before you go to bed. Maybe it doesn't really matter exactly the time. You just are very disciplined with doing that 30 minutes. dedicate time that you know you're going to work on LeetCode, and then just be consistent with your routine. Start with the easiest of easy problems and slowly, work your way up to harder and harder things. I think if you can't solve a problem, look at the solution, see how the solution works. And then if the solution mentions specific algorithms or techniques or data structures that you're not familiar with, go on a little bit of a tangent, watch some YouTube videos on that data structure. But I think it's really a matter of, with anything, it's discipline, it's doing it every day, and working your way up to harder problems. All right, let's get back to pullers a bit. I think one thing that I'm super curious, I'm guessing a lot of people here are curious to see, is okay, we did do a group by, is the performance benefits of pullers. So quickly, I'm going to quickly just try to load in a data frame that's like 2 gigabytes in Pandas and in pullers and see if I can, immediately see anything. So I feel like loading in the data frame is probably a first step. I will put the asterisk as like there's caching and different things that might be happening under the hood. So because I'm kind of doing this live, there might be little details I'm missing, but we'll do our best. All right, so in this repo, or in the GitHub of the repo that's linked in the description, I added a Kaggle dataset that's like 2 gigabytes. I'm not going to download it now. I already have it downloaded, but you can check that out. You can check that out and download the data yourself. And then if I do Command B with Visual Studio Code, I can see my data. So import pandas as PD. Real quick, I'm going to just load the data frame, the Pokemon data with pandas. So that's in data/Pokemon data.csv. I just forget if it, why is that taking so long? Why did it take 10 seconds? That is weird. I'm going to real quick restart the kernel just because I don't want that in memory. I want to just try this again and see how long it takes. So you don't want to rerun this if it's already, maybe it's already cached though. Yeah, because it took 0.3 seconds there. Pullers as PL. Oh. Okay, so loading that same data. There might be some cached things here, so you really need to be careful. And then you'll see it take 0.1 seconds. All right, the real test though is this trending YouTube.csv. I don't know if I can easily find the info in the file from Visual Studio Code. I probably can open up a Finder window real quick and find that file and look at the details. I could also do this in the terminal. I feel like everything is more difficult when you're live streaming. You forget how to do simple things. Okay. People should be able to see my full screen. So here's the Finder window. One thing I hate about Macs, following up on the question of what computer I'm using right now, I hate how Macs just let you put files anywhere and it doesn't automatically clean up things. I don't know what the deal is with that. But if I look at the properties of this file, we do see that it's 2.06 gigabytes. So it is quite a beefy file. Curious to load it on Pandas and then load it in pullers. And this is where you're going to start seeing benefits. File. I'm just going to create a variable called file path. That's going to be data/trending YouTube.csv. pass in the file path here. And here I need to be careful about loading these in memory at the same time, because there definitely will be issues with doing that. Oh, shoot, stop. Restart the kernel again. And technically, I probably should import pandas and import polars as kind of a first step. I shouldn't have those imports as part of the process, probably. This is a very unofficial way to benchmark some of this. Okay, so I'm going to run this real quick. Okay, so YouTube pandas we'll do first. pd.read CSV, and then pass in this file path. Okay, and then we'll do YouTube polars equals pl.read CSV file path. I'm going to run one and run one cell first. Why does this not recognize file path? This is a defined variable. I don't know what the deal is here. I'll create a new cell real quick and paste this in. That worked. I feel like it's just being weird. Okay. I'm going to run this pandas one first. And then I'll restart the kernel just so it's not still in memory. And then I'll load the other one. So this is a 2 GB file. We're loading it in pandas real quick. Not doing any sort of chunking or anything. We're just loading in the full 2 GB, seeing how long it goes. I might be lagging. Okay, 13.5 seconds. That's not terrible. Let's see what it happens in polars. I will real quick just restart the kernel just so the YouTube pandas is no longer in memory. How long does it take with polars? And maybe I'm doing, okay, 3.5 seconds. So you can already start seeing some significant performance benefits. Now I will load them both into memory, and then I might do some queries. The queries shouldn't really be affected, I don't think, too much by having both in memory at the same time, because I would think kind of equally affected. Maybe I'm completely wrong there. I might be completely wrong there, but curious to see if we can start querying some things and how long it takes in both. Yeah, this one took a lot longer the second time because this was already in memory. So I might be completely wrong. You probably only do want to do one at a time and completely have the other one not in memory. And you know, when I say in memory, whenever you run any of these cells, like if I run something way up here, you know, and define a variable, like way up, you know, way at the top of my Jupyter Notebook, as long as you're running the same kernel and you haven't, you know, restarted your kernel, that variable is still accessible. So, you know, in the inner workings of our laptops and our machines, like those are all in memory. They're actively stored in our random access memory. So we have limited capacity there. So you always have to be cognizant of what you have in memory. You only have limited memory. So if I load both of these at the same time, they're both in memory. So really there's like 4 GB worth of data here just taken up by these two variables. So it's, you know, when you have this first 2 GB utilized from this one, it's going to slow down the Polar's second one. I do see a question real quick that I think is a good question to answer on freelance. I think with freelance projects, I think there's a certain number of skills that are quite helpful for freelance projects. One that I always see on Upwork and other platforms like Upwork is like web scraping jobs. Like if you can get web scraping down, tons of freelance opportunities for you. I think same thing with like building reports for companies. People want automated reports for their data. So building automated pipelines of reports and stuff, also a very usable skill. But so data scraping and automated reports. My recommendation as far as freelance goes is like, I'm going to use Upwork as an example. I've done a lot of work on Upwork. I think I'm in a fortunate situation where I can reference having a following on YouTube, and that gives me a certain level of credibility. Um, but no matter where you're starting, your first goal will be to build some sort of credibility for yourself. Why should people hire you for freelance projects? And if we're using Upwork as the example here, my big recommendation is um, I also noticed that I'm covering the screen, covering myself uh, on the screen when I answer these questions. So I'm going to pop myself over here. Kind of cool. I'm using a platform called Restream. But my recommendation is start working on Upwork projects and be willing to do projects that maybe they offer very low pay. Um, Maybe you propose payments that are very, very low. And don't think of it as low payments, but think it of these projects that maybe no one else wants to take as opportunities to build your reputation. So maybe it's just like a quick consultation. Someone needs help, like fixing a bug in their Python code, and they're only willing to pay 5 or 10 US dollars. It might be very much under what you would expect to be charged for an hour of your time or 2 hours of your time. But if you can help them out and get a 5-star review and start piling up those 5-star reviews, then when the big projects come in and you apply to them, you'll have credibility over maybe some of the people that are also applying for that same job. And that will help you start landing contracts. And then as far as actually working on the freelance projects, like again, I repeat what I said before. If you do get stuck, I do think there's a level of honesty you always want to maintain, and don't just ghost a client that you're working for. Let them know, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. I think as long as there's an honest dialogue that's continuous and they know you're, making progress on the project, you're going to be okay. Where you really run into issues is if you start panicking and like run into an issue and like instead of just telling them, hey, there's like a little bit of a delay, you avoid talking to them for 2 weeks because you want to fix it quick, and then it piles up. So there's a little bit of balance of actually figuring out the workflow, but I think starting small with projects that are lower pay and building your reputation will ultimately enable you to find some of those high level freelance jobs. Um, Yeah, automated reports. I do mean dashboards. I do mean like PDF reports and stuff too. I'm going to do some YouTube videos on this soon. So yeah, Tableau would be good. You do see a lot of Tableau type stuff on Upwork. Uh, I don't think there's benefits of one over the other. I would say do what you're most comfortable with, what you're most excited to work with longer term, but it's good to be exposed to multiple things. I very much just stay in Python. I think the most recent video, if you want to build dashboards, I just did a full tutorial on Shiny, which is a great way to build dashboards in Python. So you can definitely check that out. But a lot of organizations might work in Tableau, so both have their advantages. I would say look, scan the space and see what you find as far as Upwork listings go, and maybe base off some of your learning based on what you're seeing in Upwork posts or something. I First off, no worries, Kier, on popping in late. I feel like you were a legend on the last stream, so being late is totally fine. But to answer your question on like Upwork is too hard, yeah, this is a challenge. You very much need to be on top of Upwork and applying very early to have any sort of chance. I mean, I think this is a problem we're seeing though in most platforms. In LinkedIn Jobs, we're seeing tons of issues with um, uh, like these auto applies that like thousands of people are applying to a job. Upwork is, has its issues as well. I think if you lower, what you're charging or like take jobs that maybe other people don't apply to because it's low, that can help build your credibility and you'll get a higher response rate. Um, I think it's also figuring out, employing a little bit of your own A/B testing on how you approach the applications you apply to. I've hired a bunch of people on Upwork, and I think one thing that I see is I see way too many cover letters, kind of the first thing that you post when you respond to a job, that are just so copy and paste. Like it's this massive chunk, and maybe they have a lot of good information in there. But if I have 19 applications and I need to figure out who's the best candidate, I can't read all of these massive chunks. So honestly, when I'm applying to Upwork postings, I try to be very brief and succinct, but also show that I clearly am interested in this specific task and clearly illustrate that why I have skills that are great for this task. So, you don't have to write your whole life story in the application. I think sometimes it's even better if you just can directly relate to the project. So maybe it's a project on, for a healthcare company, and maybe you thought you were going to go to med school, but then you ended up in the data world, or maybe you have family that works in medicine and you're very, personally interested in it. Making some sort of personal connection to the posting or the person posting it, and then briefly listing out your skills sometimes might be a better strategy versus the cut and dry copy paste cover letter. So, maybe you do a little A/B testing where you sometimes use a long one and then you do the succinct one and see if you measure which one is giving you most responses. And you kind of try to keep increasing your response rate. Your response rate will naturally go up as you get more credibility on Upwork. So the first jobs that you get are going to be the hardest. I know that we're going on a huge tangent on aside from polars, but I think that's totally fine. I have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet. Let me know in the chat whether it is good, and then I will decide if I go watch it very soon. Streamlit is also great. Great way to build applications for companies quickly. So definitely, I think Streamlit or Shiny or Plotly Dash are all great Python-based frameworks to spin up nice little web apps quickly. So definitely a great thing to learn. Getting into the personal details here, whether I watch Deadpool and Wolverine and what my age is. I'm 29, for better or for worse. I feel like everyone usually thinks I'm younger, but I'm getting up there in age. Wolverine might have been spelled slightly wrong, but I got the picture. All right, I'm gonna pause on questions real quick, and I'm gonna just maybe do a little bit of queries here in the Polars land, but then we can finish up with some more questions. I also do want to quickly show how I would maybe figure out what YouTube videos I would watch to learn more about polars. Because I feel like I'm balancing doing stuff like we're seeing here and actually applying some code and actually, watching YouTube videos to learn some more things. And everyone asking how I'm doing and what's up. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Things are good. All is good. Yes, you heard correct. All right, so let's do some quick. We loaded these both into memory at the same time. I don't know if that's a good thing. I think we kind of have to run one after the other. So I'm gonna. What are some queries we should implement here with pandas on this YouTube data? So I guess maybe the first step would be to look at what's in the data frame. Just look at the head. So we see some trending stuff from the Olympics, which totally makes sense for the country Zimbabwe. It ran really quickly, but what if I filtered just by country? And I just wanted to see what was I'm guessing US would work here. That also actually ran really quickly once it was in memory. Probably will be much slower if I looked up something like, just got channel names and took the string and figured out what starts with a D. I bet you this will be much slower of a query. Wow, I mean, this is a 2 GB file and it's still loading quite fast. We could, find Mr. Beast very easily in here. Bet you there's a capital A. Is there an ignore case? Okay. Okay, Mr. Beast is one word. So, I mean, this is running really quickly right now with this 2 gigabyte data set. So maybe we're not even at the big enough value that this matters. How could I do similar things with polars? I think because it's running so fast, I don't really care to restart the kernel and only load one in at a time. pl.column.channel, right? Or dot channel name. I don't know if it's Pandas 2.0 being a big improvement, because I think because I didn't specify that I wanted to use the Arrow engine, it should probably be using NumPy under the hood. I think it's just really that, like, I have a powerful machine. This is 2 gigabytes and it's not pushing the limits, where maybe if we started getting up in the 10 gigabyte plus, we'd really see the performance benefit. But I mean, kind of what I was saying earlier with why I haven't used polars yet is I often find myself, like, even when I'm working with slightly bigger files, 2 gigabyte plus, like, I'm not getting completely performance burdened by pandas. I can do my tasks, but that's largely because I'm not building data engineering pipelines that are run every day, that performance and, like, the amount of compute resources I use matters as much. So there's things to think about there. String that starts with, so it's slightly different than what we saw with this. And I'm going to do MR again. But we see that ran super, super fast. This started, 0.1 seconds versus 0.0 seconds. This is not perfect timing, but cool things to see. Cool. All right, real quick, let's just look at where some good YouTube resources might be for polars. Because I found I learn a ton. Like, let's say there's a library that you want to learn. Watching like an assortment of 5 to 10 YouTube videos from different creators, different teachers and educators, you learn a lot because everyone has their own tips and tricks. And by, like, aggregating these different resources, I feel like you just pick up so much more than you do by just looking at documentation or just playing around with things. Oh, wow. This is popping up right now. That's funny. It's definitely, my YouTube is biased because of, it's also funny that you guys can see my home screen, what's popping up. What are the videos right here? Got some table tennis. I'm a big table tennis guy, and I'm so impressed by the Olympic table tennis. Polars Python. So, like, looking at this, I like a lot of Rob Mullah's stuff. I think he's has a lot of really educational stuff. So I'd probably check out this video. I might check out Matt Harrison's video. There's not a ton. It doesn't look like there's a ton of, like, videos just from my immediate search. So maybe there needs to be some more. Yeah, it's like a lot of high level stuff. Maybe I'll look up polars project. This looks like maybe a pretty good playlist to check out. I'd play around with different videos here, and I would do that kind of breakdown that I was recommending at the start of the video, where, and yeah, if you missed the start, you missed a fun presentation. But, do different 45 to 90 minute blocks and make one of those 45 to 90 minute blocks just a rapid fire, watch some YouTube videos and see what you pick up, and then start applying those skills. So another tip to recommend out. Yeah, I'm happy to check the memory usage for the Pandas DataFrame versus polars. Do you want to share with me the commands that you would probably recommend running there? I'm trying to think what they would be off the top of my head, and I might, let's see. we can do YouTube pandas.mem memory usage. How do I make this human readable? I think .info, I mean, that should tell me how much. That's so weird. I mean, this is a 2 gigabyte file. Well, okay, it's saying it's 220.8 plus megabytes, so I guess that's clear. I don't know what the equivalent would be in polars. I could very easily look it up. Also, if people look at I probably should get a charger here. I don't know how much time we have left. Polars, DataFrame dot estimated size. So I can do a YouTube polars dot estimated size. And that's the exact amount. That's the 2 gigs we're talking about. This is in bytes, I'm sure. So if we divided that by 1,000, that would give us the megabytes. If we divided by 1,000,000, that would give us the gigabytes. Did I screw up something here? Bytes, kilobytes, megabyte. Oh, okay. It actually needs to be divided by 1 billion or whatever. Point is that, this shows the 2 gigabytes that we're talking about. And I'm sure that the YouTube Pandas is equivalent. Why did my lights just turn off? Oh, cool. This is a super helpful command. Thank you for. Don't have to do the division. Unit equals megabyte. So 1913 megabytes, a little under the 2 gigs. And we see wherever this was 220.8 plus megabytes. I wonder how we get the actual full size. I forget what a nice equivalent would be in Pandas. I'd have to double check it. Cool. Let me get a charger real quick. All right, I'm going to just look at the Polars website for another 5 minutes, and then I'll just open this up to Q&A. Curious to see what else I can find here. We got through this. Contexts. This is kind of what we were playing around with. This all made sense. The group buys we played around with briefly. We got expressions here. I'd say regarding this snippet sensations, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or something. I'm happy to maybe get to share some thoughts on that. So find me on LinkedIn. All right, expressions. Okay, this is I think what we were seeing in line, sorting in line, kind of doing these one-liners. What is this lazy eager API? This is probably good to learn. That's cool. Lazy API, the query is only evaluated once it's needed. Cool. That's something I'd look into more. How do you specify whether it's lazy or eager? I mean, a lot of this stuff, like what I'm seeing when I'm looking through the documentation, is very similar. I feel like it's pretty easy to go from Pandas and switch over here. This looks interesting to use the lazy API. Oh, and you can call .lazy. How did this actually start? Oh, because this is not run until it's needed by setting it as a query. That's cool. So this is definitely something I'd probably dive into more because this seems like a very important concept with optimizing polars. Oh, this is cool too. There's a coming from Pandas and coming from Apache Spark. So this is definitely worth checking out too. Yeah. Polar, this is a big concept. Polar adheres to Apache Arrow, where Pandas uses NumPy. And one, asterisk I would put here is that with Pandas 2.0, you can actually use that Apache Arrow format as well. So that does give you some big performance boosts to Pandas specifically. Oh, this is really cool. This is really helpful if you're coming from Pandas. I'll put up this link in the guide. Learning as we go. All right, I'm going to read this more in one of those dedicated blocks that I'm mentioning. This seems like the page to really focus on, and I know I'm not going to pick it up as easily while on live stream versus really focusing with my phone turned off, etc. So this page is useful. I'll paste this in paste it in the chat now, but I'll also put it in the oh shoot. I don't know how that works. I wanted to send this as me, not restream. Okay. Actually, I think that links go through. Maybe they don't. We'll see. We'll see if the link goes through the chat, but I'll put it in the description. Cool. I'm going to pause there. I'll open it up to a couple more minutes of questions. Hopefully this was kind of a helpful starting point for some Polar stuff and approaching it. Obviously, we were learning as we go, so it wasn't, a perfect, succinct, clear educational session, but I still think we covered a lot of cool little things and answered some good questions. How do I get back to my code? My brain just goes dumb when I am streaming or teaching, any sort of Zoom live thing. Command B to hide this. Creating new cells with escape and B. Nice little shortcut to know. We'll make a header here. All right. Any questions while I'm here? Could be on anything. Happy to answer any questions, whether it be polars, learning a new library, Python, freelance, my table tennis skills. It's also going to be a learning opportunity for how long exactly the lag time is. I really should play around with, I wonder if I can even change this dynamically, because there's like, I don't know, a 10-second lag, I think. I'm going to see if I can play with this setting real quick. I might just kill the stream if I do it. I don't know if I can do it while I'm actually streaming. Might have to be done offline. Good question. I definitely would love anyone that's watching this or watching retroactively. Let me know things that they'd be interested to hear streamed, or cadence and stuff, and maybe I would play around with Twitch and stuff. I feel like I'm still very much figuring out streaming and how it works and best practices. I feel like my big goal right now with content is producing something every week, so having some sort of new video every week. I think though, because I often release, 5-hour plus tutorials or something, it's not super realistic to post a new big tutorial every week. So I'm going to try to weeks that I don't have content ready, maybe just kind of stream. I don't know if I have a certain schedule or not, but I would like to just do it whenever I don't have content produced so that there's always something to tune into each week. So that's kind of my big goal right now. So that doesn't really answer the question, but maybe once or twice a month, and then maybe increase it depending on people's interests. I think that I feel like I see pullers potentially coming mainstream over. I think we're going to have a little bit of a healthy competition, with Pandas releasing Pandas 2.0. I feel like that was a big step forward with performance on the Panda side. So I think we'll see a little bit of this back and forth. I think maybe in certain circles, pullers will slowly become more and more mainstream. I think if you look at I wish I had the chart here. Maybe I can find the chart. Pullers, GitHub stars versus Pandas. Pullers is definitely shot up in popularity. Let's see if I can find this. I think maybe even the Pullers website has it somewhere. I think in certain circles, you'll see pullers become more and more popular. Like if you are in the data engineering ecosystem and performance is so critical, you'll see more and more pullers. I think if you're a more casual Python user and you're picking up data analysis and basic data frame processing, I think because a lot of still we're in the ecosystem where most tutorials you'll find pandas, most documentation and existing projects you'll find a lot of panda stuff. I don't think that we'll see pandas go away anytime soon, but I do think, in certain ecosystems like data engineering, you'll see a rapid rise in pullers. But I don't think that pandas is going anywhere, at least for the next 3 years, I'm going to say, as my baseline. It's always good to learn new things and just have a finger on the ecosystem, just so you're not caught off guard when things do inevitably change. We'll have to, if I'm ever in Spain, we'll have to get a table tennis game in. You will probably crush me, but I will give it my all. I'm not scared. I am a little scared, but it will be fun. I wouldn't worry too much about whether you're using pandas or pullers. I think that use whatever you're more comfortable with. And if you start running into bottlenecks, so if performance becomes a bottleneck, if let's say you have to have something run in a certain amount of time and it's taking way too long, that's when you'd really want to make the jump from pandas to pullers and really think about performance optimizations. But I think you can largely build a project with whatever you're comfortable with. But if you start seeing repeated issues, that's when you should, maybe pivot, find a different solution, etc. I wouldn't let your projects dictate what you need. Don't be too concerned without knowing what you're working on one or the other. Just knowing one of them will allow you to work with data frames and will set you up for success. Yeah, again, I will repeat. Anyone watching this now or in the future would love in the comments probably recommendations for live streams and cadence and maybe even recommending other people that live stream tech stuff or code that you think do a particularly good job, just so I can learn from them. I do want to improve and do more of these. Definitely do more structured ones too. Today was kind of an ad hoc. Figured it was a cool opportunity to do to stream something, but I'll definitely do more polished lessons in the future. All right, I probably will call it one last call for questions, but I probably will call it. We're at hour 45. I was going to do 2 to 3-ish hours, but I think I don't have a ton more to cover right now. Happy to, yeah, I'm gonna make a more polished polars tutorial as I get more and more comfortable with it. So be on the lookout for that. And if there's specific questions or struggles that you're having with the library, let me know in the comments, and I'll kind of tailor the tutorial based on that feedback. Yeah, this will be interesting to look at. I think, some things that I'm immediately curious about is like Pandas has some nice built-in uh, compatibility with libraries like Matplotlib and some of these visualization libraries. I wonder if you get some of the same benefits with polars, or if maybe if you have to do a lot of data viz stuff that maybe it's easier to stick with Pandas for now. So yeah, that's a good question and something that I'll have to investigate as well. I feel like data science versus data engineering. First off, I feel like data science is a very broad, so it's hard to like pinpoint a specific role. Where I feel like data engineering, it also is broad field, but it's a little bit more, I feel like, bounded with what typical roles contain. I would first ask yourself the question of like, what are you interested in? I think you're always going to have more success if you're working in the space that you find genuinely interesting. So if optimizing, big data pipelines and just really working with the structure and uh, how data flows through a system is exciting to you, like, probably focus more on the data engineering space. That's what's gonna, like, you want to focus on whatever pushes you to learn more. So both are in demand. I think just because data engineering is a little bit more bounded, it's probably easier to find opportunities in that space and learn the proper skills. But with the rise of large language models, all that, companies are also very much looking for people that can, take advantage of these new AI models and incorporate it and, optimize company tools with them. So both are very in demand. It's really I feel like a tricky job market to find those right fits, even though there are opportunities that exist. Always just be up leveling your skills, building cool projects that you can show off and talk about in interviews. I think the biggest step for landing roles is like being a good networker, having people in your community that are working at companies you're interested in, and being able to, learn off of them, go to different events, and like just build a network of people that you could kind of go to if maybe you're looking for a job at their company one day. I think networking is big. I love this. Yeah, we're not talking about that's funny. It is fun, the names Python, pandas. No bears, but polar bears, I guess. That's funny. That's funny. Uh, all right. I'm going to call it here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. These are always fun. Appreciate all the feedback and comments. If there's additional questions, as I've said about 12 times already, let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to kind of monitor and answer things and make new content based on all of your feedback. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. It's Thursday. I know we still got one more day to go, but hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, peace out. Smash that like button and subscribe. I didn't say that. Oh no. Peace.